I'm so glad you were here.
Yeah. Just glad I could help.
In a quiet California town, Jake Thompson, a young mechanic, spends his days repairing cars and helping anyone in need. One rainy evening, a young woman named Lily Anderson, confined to a wheelchair, rolls up to his garage with a broken chair. What begins as a simple act of kindness will soon turn into an unforgettable story of surprise, gratitude, and life-changing moments. Like, share and subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. In a quiet, sleepy town in California, Jake Thompson, 25 male, had always found comfort in routine. His small auto garage, tucked between a corner diner and a laundromat, had seen better days, but it was his sanctuary. He spent long hours there, fixing cars that had been abandoned by wealthier mechanics, tuning engines, replacing broken parts, and restoring vehicles to life. Jake's hands were perpetually covered in grease, and the scent of motor oil and metal lingered on his clothes. He didn't have much in terms of material wealth, but the work gave him purpose, and purpose was enough. That rainy evening seemed like any other, with water streaking down the fogged-up windows and droplets tapping rhythmically against the roof. As Jake was wiping his hands on a rag and preparing to close for the night, the sound of a car rolling to a stop caught his attention. He looked up and saw a sleek black sports car slowly coming to a halt outside the garage. Its glossy surface glistened under the dim streetlights, reflecting the puddles scattered along the slick asphalt. What caught his eye more than the car, however, was the figure beside it, a young woman struggling in a wheelchair. Her movements were careful, almost labored, and he noticed the way she shifted back and forth, trying to move forward with difficulty. The electric wheelchair she sat in was clearly malfunctioning. Sparks flickered from the base, and the wheels spun unevenly on the wet pavement. Without a moment's hesitation, Jake grabbed his raincoat and stepped outside. The rain poured heavily, soaking through the fabric, but he didn't care. He approached the wheelchair and assessed the situation quickly. "Hey, let me help you with that," he called gently, crouching to get a closer look. The young woman, Lily Anderson, 27 female, glanced at him, surprise and hesitation flickering across her face. She was dressed elegantly despite the storm, but her expression revealed vulnerability. She hadn't expected anyone to offer help this late in the rain, in a town she barely knew. Her hands trembled slightly as she released the controls, allowing Jake to lift the wheelchair with care. The electric chair was heavier than it looked, but Jake's trained hands managed it with ease. Once inside the garage, Jake placed the chair on a worn rubber mat. The workshop smelled of motor oil, old tires, and faint traces of coffee from earlier in the day. Lily wheeled closer to a small bench nearby, her gaze fixed on Jake as he examined the wheelchair. Sparks danced lightly from a faulty wire, and moisture had seeped into the motor compartment, likely causing the malfunction. Jake's fingers moved deftly, checking each connection, tightening loose bolts and testing the wheel alignment. His face was calm, focused, and determined. Rain continued to patter against the roof, but inside the garage, there was a bubble of quiet determination. A momentary pause from the storm outside. Lily watched him work, her eyes wide, curiosity mingling with hope. She hadn't trusted anyone in a long time. Accidents and setbacks had made her wary, but there was something different about this young mechanic. His hands moved skillfully over the wheelchair, as if repairing it was not just a task, but a matter of pride and care. She noticed the way he paused to inspect each detail, the care with which he aligned the wheels, and how he gently tested the motor before moving on to the next adjustment. It was meticulous work, a patience that contrasted sharply with the rushed, impersonal help she was used to receiving. "Almost done," Jake said softly, his voice steady and kind. He adjusted the final bolt and wiped his hands on a rag. "Give it a try." Hesitant but eager, Lily guided the wheelchair forward. The motor hummed smoothly, the wheels rolling evenly across the mat. A small smile crept across her face, the first genuine one in weeks. She spun the chair slightly, feeling the balance, testing the controls. Jake watched, satisfied, but more than that, he felt a subtle warmth spread in his chest. Helping someone in need, seeing them regain a measure of independence, it was the kind of reward that money could never buy. For Lily, the moment was transformative. It wasn't just a mechanical fix. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that there were still people in the world who cared enough to act without expectation. She had spent weeks feeling trapped, isolated and vulnerable, yet here in this modest garage, with the rain blurring the world outside, she felt seen. Jake, unaware of the depth of her struggle, had offered kindness freely. That act, simple as it was, had opened a door she hadn't realized she'd been searching for. The storm outside began to ease, raindrops slowing into a gentle drizzle. Jake leaned against the workbench, watching Lily test her newly restored wheelchair. "Everything feels perfect," she said, her voice soft, almost reverent. He shrugged modestly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Just doing my job," he said, though inside he knew it was more than that. It was the kind of night that would stay with both of them. The mechanic who fixed not only a chair, but unknowingly sparked a sense of hope. And the young woman who realized that sometimes help comes when you least expect it. As Lily maneuvered the chair toward the garage door, ready to head home, she turned to Jake and said, "Thank you." "Truly." He nodded, shrugging again, but his eyes reflected something deeper than words, a connection, a mutual understanding, a fleeting moment that might very well change their lives. The quiet garage, the storm outside, and the glow of the workshop lights created a scene that neither of them would forget. For Jake, it was another repair, another night in the garage. For Lily, it was the start of something entirely new, a night when hope returned on wheels. After the initial repair, Jake didn't stop at simply fixing the motor. He examined the wheelchair from top to bottom, carefully checking each joint, wheel alignment and wiring connection. His hands, accustomed to the feel of engines and mechanical parts, worked with precision and care. This wasn't just about mechanics for him. It was about helping someone regain a part of their independence, and he took the responsibility seriously. He adjusted the seat cushioning, replacing worn padding with a softer foam that he had salvaged from an old car seat. Every bolt was tightened, every wire carefully insulated to prevent future malfunctions. Lily Anderson, 27, female, watched him work, her eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity, apprehension, and growing trust. She had been paralyzed for over a year after a car accident, and daily life had become a series of challenges that she navigated with effort and patience. The sudden breakdown of her wheelchair had left her stranded in the rain, evoking feelings of helplessness she hadn't felt since the accident. Yet as Jake worked silently and methodically, those feelings slowly began to ebb. His presence was calming, and his dedication reminded her that there were still people willing to give selflessly without judgment. "Do you always fix things this carefully?" Lily asked softly, trying to break the quiet tension of the garage. Her voice was hesitant, unsure if casual conversation was appropriate, but Jake looked up with a small smile, wiping his hands on a rag. "I like to do things right. Whether it's a car or, well, a wheelchair, it deserves the same respect," he said. There was an honesty in his tone that resonated deeply with Lily. She felt seen, not as someone defined by her injury, but as a person whose needs mattered. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel hope, fragile yet real, bloom inside her chest. Jake continued working, installing subtle enhancements that he thought might improve maneuverability, adjusting the wheel sensitivity, testing the motor's response, and ensuring that the chair glided smoothly even over rough garage floorboards. Every few moments, he would step back, watch Lily's reactions as she tested small adjustments, and nod to himself when her expressions changed from tentative to confident. "Try turning it now," he said, and Lily pushed the joystick forward. The wheelchair responded effortlessly, moving in a fluid motion she hadn't felt in months. She spun around the garage with laughter spilling from her lips, a sound that filled the small space with warmth. The storm outside continued its descent, rain tapping against the roof and windows. But inside, the garage felt safe and almost magical. The atmosphere shifted from one of urgency to one of quiet companionship. Lily began opening up about her life, the accident that had confined her, the struggles with daily independence, and the isolation she had endured. She spoke about the subtle sorrows that came with living in a wheelchair, the glances of pity she received, and the loneliness that crept into her evenings. Jake listened with genuine attention, never interrupting, never offering empty reassurances. Instead, he responded with encouragement rooted in empathy, helping her to see strength where she had only recognized limitation. Hours passed, and Jake finally stepped back to survey his work. The wheelchair was not only fully repaired, but also enhanced with minor customizations he had improvised. Extra cushioning, smoother wheel rotation, and improved battery efficiency. Lily tested every function, and with each movement her confidence grew. She spun in small circles, maneuvered around obstacles, and even leaned forward slightly to check the chair's responsiveness. Each small action reinforced the feeling that freedom had been restored. Her smiles grew more genuine, and her laughter echoed around the walls of the garage. Jake couldn't help but smile back, his satisfaction not from monetary gain, but from witnessing her joy. As they continued to talk, the bond between them deepened. Lily shared fragments of her world before the accident, her love for painting, her work in graphic design, and her desire to travel. She confided that while she had wealth and opportunities, the accident had stripped her of autonomy, leaving her feeling trapped. Jake shared bits of his life too, how he had grown up in the town, learned mechanical skills from his father, and now ran his own modest garage. He spoke about dreams of expanding the shop, of someday helping more people regain what they had lost. The conversation flowed naturally, bridging the gap between two lives that had previously existed in separate spheres. By the time the storm outside began to subside, Lily's wheelchair was not just functional, but a symbol of restored independence. Her gratitude toward Jake was palpable, expressed in quiet, heartfelt words, and a bright smile that lit up the dim garage. Jake, in turn, felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced in a long time, a connection that transcended the simple act of mechanical repair. Little did he know that this encounter was only the beginning of a journey that would intertwine their lives in ways neither could have predicted. Before leaving, Lily looked at Jake and said softly, "I can't thank you enough. You've changed more than just my chair tonight." Jake shrugged modestly, "Just doing what I can." "You'll be fine, Lily. You've got this." And with that, she wheeled herself out into the quiet streets, her heart lighter and her spirit rejuvenated. Jake returned to his workbench, reflecting on the night's events. It wasn't just the chair he had repaired. It was hope, trust, and the first step in a new beginning for someone who had felt helpless for too long. The night ended with a calm that mirrored the clearing sky. Rain droplets lingered on the windows, catching the faint light of the street lamps. Jake cleaned his tools slowly, savoring the quiet sense of accomplishment. Somewhere out there, Lily moved forward with newfound confidence, and Jake realized that moments like these, when skill met compassion, were worth more than any paycheck. The story of the small garage, the broken wheelchair, and the kind mechanic was far from over. It had just begun, promising a journey of hope, resilience, and unexpected companionship. The morning sun glinted off the rooftops of Jake Thompson's small California garage as he sipped his first cup of coffee. The previous night's work had left him feeling quietly satisfied. Repairing Lily's wheelchair had been more than a mechanical challenge. It had been an emotional journey. Jake's thoughts drifted to her laughter, the look of relief on her face, and the trust she had shown him, despite only knowing him for a few hours. He set down his mug, ready to begin his day's work, when a distant rhythmic whirring broke the usual quiet of the street. The unmistakable sound of helicopter blades filled the air, growing louder by the second. Curiosity pricked at him, and Jake stepped outside. He could hardly believe his eyes as a sleek black helicopter descended smoothly, landing just a few feet from the garage. The rotors stirred the morning air into a whirlwind, fluttering papers and dust around the small courtyard. As the blades slowed, the door opened and Lily Anderson, 27 female, emerged, looking stunning in a tailored jacket and polished boots, her wheelchair neatly secured nearby. Jake felt a jolt of surprise. He had expected a simple thank you at most, perhaps a card or a cup of coffee, not this grandiose gesture. She wheeled herself toward him, her expression a mixture of excitement, warmth, and gratitude. "Jake," she said, her voice bright yet sincere, "I wanted to thank you properly. You did something incredible last night. I couldn't just leave it at that." Jake, still catching his breath, managed a small smile, brushing grease from his hands instinctively. The reality of the situation sank in slowly. Here he was, a humble mechanic standing in front of a young woman who had returned in a helicopter, a symbol of wealth and influence beyond his own world. His mind raced. Why would someone like Lily go to such lengths for him? As she spoke, Lily shared more of her story. She explained that her family had been eager to recognize acts of kindness and had insisted on this gesture as a token of their gratitude. Yet for her, it wasn't about material grandeur. It was about acknowledging that someone had genuinely cared when she felt most vulnerable. Jake listened intently, absorbing each word, realizing that the impact of his simple act, repairing a wheelchair, had rippled far beyond the small garage walls. He felt both humbled and awed, his hands itching to reach out, to touch the metal of the chair that had become a symbol of newfound independence. The morning air felt charged with emotion. Jake's mind wandered to the events of the previous night, the storm, the struggle of maneuvering the broken wheelchair, and Lily's tentative smiles. He remembered her laughter echoing through the garage, the way her eyes had brightened as he made small adjustments to the chair. It wasn't just a repair. It had been a moment of restoration for her dignity and freedom. Now standing here, witnessing her dramatic return, he realized that his work had contributed to something far larger, a profound human connection that transcended social class, wealth, or circumstance. Lily motioned toward the wheelchair and said softly, "I wanted to show you the difference you've made. Every spin, every turn, it's thanks to you. And I wanted you to see that your kindness truly changed my life." Jake approached cautiously, awe evident on his face. He gently ran his hand over the wheelchair, still gleaming from the modifications he had made, now bathed in morning sunlight. It was a tangible reminder of the trust she had placed in him, and of the way small acts can create enormous ripples. In that moment, he realized that repairing machines wasn't his only calling. He had touched lives in ways he had never imagined. Over the next hour, the conversation between them flowed naturally. Lily shared how she had felt trapped and helpless before that night, how each day had been a struggle to navigate the world in a broken chair. Jake spoke of his own life, of long hours at the garage, of nights spent alone tinkering with engines, and of the satisfaction that came from seeing tangible results of hard work. Each exchange deepened their bond, creating a foundation built on mutual respect, trust, and the recognition that kindness has a power all its own. Jake marveled at how a single act, a few hours of focused work, could forge a connection stronger than any social barrier. As the helicopter prepared to lift off, Lily extended her hand, this time with a different energy. "I wanted to make sure you knew that your kindness matters," she said, eyes glistening. "And not just to me. You've reminded me that there are people who care beyond wealth or status. You've reminded me that humanity is bigger than fear or isolation." Jake took her hand, feeling an unexpected warmth spread through him. He realized she wasn't just thanking him. She was recognizing him as a human being, as someone who had given hope when it was needed most. It was a rare, transformative acknowledgement that made him feel seen and valued. When the helicopter finally lifted into the sky, the wind whipping through the garage doors and trees, Jake stood still watching Lily rise above the town, her presence leaving a lingering sense of awe. He felt changed, as though the world had expanded around him. What had begun as a simple repair job, a task he performed countless times, had evolved into a profound reminder of the potential within acts of compassion. He looked at the garage, at the tools and machines that had defined his life, and realized that the greatest work he had done wasn't mechanical. It had been human. By the afternoon, Jake's mind kept returning to Lily's words, her smile, and the dramatic helicopter return that had shocked yet inspired him. He walked through the garage, cleaning tools and reflecting on the night's events. The simple act of helping a stranger in need had turned into a moment that would stay with him forever. Jake realized that sometimes the most extraordinary moments in life come from ordinary people making small decisions to act with care. He understood that the measure of a life isn't wealth, power, or recognition. It's the ability to impact others, sometimes in ways you'll never fully understand. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the garage, Jake leaned against his workbench, thinking about the future. He knew that he had been given a rare gift, the opportunity to see firsthand the power of kindness and the profound effect it can have on someone's life. And although he was still a young mechanic in a small town, he understood that his actions mattered. The bond formed that rainy night, solidified by Lily's dramatic return, would stay with him forever, reminding him that life often rewards those who give without expectation. By the evening, Jake sat quietly, the garage bathed in fading light. The helicopter's departure had marked a pivotal moment in both their lives. He realized that helping someone wasn't just about the task at hand. It was about seeing the potential for joy, hope, and transformation. That morning had been more than a surprise. It was a revelation. Sometimes the smallest acts can create the largest change, and Jake knew in his heart that this encounter would inspire him to live with the same compassion and dedication he had shown Lily. The story of the struggling mechanic and the young woman in a wheelchair spread quietly through the town, inspiring neighbors, friends, and even strangers who heard of it. Jake Thompson's small act of help had become a symbol of hope. It reminded everyone that kindness can change lives in ways no one could foresee. And as Jake looked at the twilight sky, he knew that the night of the storm, the hours of repair, and Lily's extraordinary helicopter return had forever transformed his understanding of life. Compassion and the extraordinary power of small, selfless acts